At first I brushed it off. David wasn't the type to call every day. He was quiet, independent, a child who had always preferred books to people, shadows to crowds. But even in his solitude, he had a rhythm, a check-in every Sunday morning, a text every few days just to say, "I'm okay, Ma." He wasn't affectionate, but he was thoughtful. So when Sunday came and went with silence, I felt a pinch of worry. By Wednesday, it had bloomed into a dull throb in my chest. By day 14, that dull throb had grown teeth. I called his number again, straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. I knew it like mothers know when their babies are cold, even when the room is warm. That morning, I packed a bag and made the 2-hour drive to the small town of Elmridge, where David had been living for the last 3 years. A quiet place, too quiet, I used to say. Trees whispered secrets there. The kind of town where nothing ever happened until it did. His house sat at the end of a narrow gravel road, tucked behind crooked pine trees and wild rose bushes that hadn't been trimmed in months. His car was in the driveway, dusty but there. I knocked, waited, knocked again. Silence. My heart began to thud louder than my fists. I reached for the knob. It turned easily. The front door was unlocked. The moment I stepped in, a coldness swept through me. Not just from the drafty hall, but something deeper, the kind of cold that settles in your bones and whispers, something is very, very wrong. The living room was a mess. Books stacked in disarray, food containers left half eaten on the coffee table. My son was neat, meticulous even. This wasn't like him. I moved through the house calling softly, "David, it's Mom, are you here?" A silence answered. In the kitchen, I found 2 plates in the sink, one with eggs moldy, the other some kind of pasta. And there, next to the sink, lay a long, thin gold hairpin. I held it between my fingers, heart pounding. Someone had been here. A woman, maybe, but who? David had never mentioned anyone. Never brought anyone home. After his father died, he closed himself off, locking his heart in some unreachable place. I respected that. I never pried. Maybe I should have. The hallway lights flickered as I walked past the bathroom. I paused. Something caught my eye in the mirror. Lipstick, a faint, smudged red kiss on the glass. I stared at it, chilled. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't old either. I wiped it away with shaking hands. Who had left it? And where was my son? I climbed the stairs slowly, listening. The floorboards creaked under me like a warning. His bedroom was neat, but something felt off. The air was heavy on the nightstand, and was a framed photo, one I hadn't seen before. David, smiling. Arms slung around a young woman, blonde, slim, pale blue eyes, pretty. I didn't recognize her. There was something in her smile I didn't like. Something performative, like a mask. I opened his closet. His clothes were there, but missing a few jackets. His boots were gone. Had he left on his own? But why leave without telling me? I sank onto his bed, confused and scared. That's when I saw the paper sticking out from beneath the bed frame, a letter torn at the edge. Just a few lines. You said you loved me, but now you lock me in silence. If I can't have you whole, I'll have your silence instead. The handwriting was delicate. Slanted, feminine. I read it again, and my blood ran cold. What did it mean? Who wrote this? Downstairs, I checked the back door. Locked. The windows most sealed, but one in the kitchen had been left slightly ajar. And then I heard it, a creak not from where I stood, below. I turned toward the basement door. It was shut, but not locked. The handle was scratched fresh. I gripped the knob and stopped. My instincts screamed, "Don't go down there." But my heart, my mother's heart, couldn't listen. I opened the door. Darkness stared back. The smell hit me first, musty, damp, mixed with something sour. Like rot, I fumbled for the switch. The light buzzed weakly on, casting long shadows down the stairs. "David!" I called again. My voice sounded too loud, too lonely. No answer. I stepped down, 1 step, 2, then 3. Something scraped against the cement floor below. I froze, then silence again. The basement looked empty. Old boxes, paint cans, a broken lamp, but at the far end, tucked in shadow, was a door I hadn't seen before. Metal reinforced, padlocked. What the hell was this? My breath caught in my throat. I pressed my ear to the cold surface. And I heard it, a faint, almost imagined, breathing. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Who was in there? A horrible thought struck me. Was it David? I didn't have a key. I didn't have tools. But I had something better. Rage and a mother's desperation. I ran back up the stairs, took the tire iron from the garage, and returned to the basement. With every swing, I chipped at the padlock, cursing, crying, praying, until it snapped. The door creaked open slowly. Darkness, and then a whisper. "Mom," I gasped. It was David, but his voice, it was hoarse, weak, as if he hadn't spoken in days. I stepped in, light from the basement spilling over his pale face. He was on the floor, slumped, eyes bloodshot, hands bruised. He looked up at me with tears and fear. "She's coming back," he said, barely a breath. "You have to leave, now." My stomach dropped. He opened his mouth to answer, but then he froze. His eyes locked on something, or someone behind me. The basement door had creaked again. Footsteps. A woman's voice, soft and sing-song, echoed down. I didn't turn around right away. I couldn't. Because I knew, from the pitch of her voice, the sugar in it, the familiarity that crawled over my skin like ants, I'd heard it before. Years ago, younger, colder, but it was her, Tessa. I turned slowly, tire iron clenched in my hand like a lifeline. She stood at the top of the basement stairs, her silhouette outlined by the light from above. Long blonde hair. Slender frame, a floral dress, the kind you'd wear to a picnic, not a hostage scene. She was barefoot. Smiling, like nothing was wrong. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "You're early." I blinked, stunned. Early, she descended the stairs calmly, each footstep deliberate. I could hear the soft thud of her heels on wood, like a clock counting down something terrible. "I figured it'd be another day or two before you showed up," she continued, her voice almost cheerful. "David told me you were nosy." My hands were trembling, but I raised the tire iron between us. "Don't come closer." Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, Elinor," still so dramatic. She said my name like a curse, or a lullaby. That's when it clicked. I looked at her face again, the familiar shape of her cheekbones, the color of her eyes. Not just familiar. Known, a flash from the past. A younger Tessa, 10 years old, sitting in my kitchen eating cookies she didn't ask for, humming to herself while her mother, Marla, sat across from me, tears in her eyes. That day, Marla told me she was leaving town, said it was for Tessa's health, but something in her eyes said otherwise. We hadn't spoken since, but now here she was, grown, twisted, and holding my son hostage. "You did this to him," I said, voice cracking. Tessa's eyes flicked toward David, who was struggling to sit up in the shadows behind me. "I didn't hurt him," she said gently. "I loved him, I still do. You just don't understand what we had." I stepped in front of David, shielding him. "You locked him in a basement." Her smile cracked for the first time. Just a flicker. "He wanted to leave me," she whispered. "Just like they all did. He said I was too much, but I gave him everything. I was everything." Her voice trembled, a quiet rage creeping in. "Just like your husband promised me the world and then left." The air went still. I stared at her. The room shifted. The floor felt further away. "What did you say?" Her eyes met mine, sharp now. "You didn't know, did you?" she said softly. "He told me he would leave you. He said you didn't love him anymore." My mind reeled. My lungs forgot how to breathe. "Tessa, what are you talking about?" She laughed, a short, bitter sound. I was 16. He was kind, gentle. He called me beautiful, said I was smart. I didn't understand what it meant back then, not really, but he made me feel seen. And then he disappeared. I stared at her in horror. You're saying, yes, she hissed. Your husband, your perfect, saintly husband. He was my first love, my first heartbreak. He told me I mattered. Then he went back to you. My mouth opened. No sound came out. David groaned behind me. Mom, he whispered, she's not okay. She needs help. But help wouldn't come in time. Not for her and not for what she'd already done. Tessa stepped forward again, and this time I didn't stop her. She crouched beside David, brushing his hair back like a mother would to a sick child. You still don't get it, she murmured. He's not just your son anymore. He's mine too. I remade him. I took care of him. He's safe with me. David winced and turned his face away. She stood slowly and turned to me. You took him from me once. You won't do it again. She moved like lightning. But I was faster. I swung the tire iron not to kill, not even to injure, but to knock her off balance. She staggered back, eyes wide with shock, and I grabbed David by the arm, pulling him up. We ran. The next hours were a blur. Police, ambulance, flashing lights, questions, so many questions. David was rushed to the hospital, severely dehydrated and undernourished, but alive. My son was alive. They arrested Tessa on the spot. She didn't resist, just stared at me the whole time, as if I were the villain, as if I had ruined everything. Her mother, Marla, was brought in for questioning. I saw her once, through the police station glass, her face pale, mouth tight. She didn't look at me, but her daughter looked right into my soul. At the hospital, David lay in a pale blue bed, and Roman IV in his arm, and dark circles under his eyes. I held his hand just like I had the day he was born. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? He asked weakly. For not protecting you from the parts of my past I never told you about. He closed his eyes. I should have told you about her, he said. But she seemed normal at first, kind. She made me feel like I wasn't so alone. That was what hurt the most. She hadn't taken him with chains. She had taken him with loneliness. Before I left that night, a nurse handed me David's belongings in a plastic bag. Among them was the photo from his nightstand, and David and Tessa, smiling. I flipped it over. Written on the back in her delicate handwriting, "We are what they tried to bury." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I pulled out the old box of letters my husband had written me in the early years. I read every single one, searching for signs, clues, a confession. There was none. But in one letter, dated 3 months before his death, I found this. There are things I can't undo, Elle, but I hope one day you'll forgive me anyway. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about Tessa. This was about me, him, all of us, a chain of sins, passed down like an heirloom. David didn't talk much in the hospital. He mostly stared out the window, blinking slowly, like he was trying to wake up from a dream he didn't remember falling asleep in. The doctors said he was lucky, no broken bones, no permanent damage, physically, at least, but there was something behind his eyes now. A quietness that wasn't there before, a hollow, doubt silence. I sat by his bed every day, reading out loud from the books he loved as a child. He never said much, but when I reached the part where the lost boy in the story finds his way home, I caught him wiping a tear away. On the 4th day, he finally spoke. "Mom," he said quietly, "there's something in the basement you need to see." I didn't want to go back there. God, I didn't. That house had become a mausoleum of trust, the place where my son was buried alive by love. But I nodded because I knew what he meant. It wasn't over. 2 days later, once he was discharged, we returned together. It was early morning. The town was still asleep, the streets covered in a thin mist. The smell of pine and wet earth filled the air, but the house still smelled like it had that day. Mold, dust, secrets. David's hands trembled as he unlocked the front door. He hadn't been back since the night they pulled him out. We walked inside. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a voice screaming from the past. He led me downstairs, back to the basement, back to that door. But this time, he didn't stop at the little room where he'd been kept. Instead, he pulled up the carpet in the far corner of the basement, revealing a hidden hatch in the floor, one I hadn't seen before. Rusted shut, bolted with chains. She used to go down there, he said, voice dry, for hours. I stared at him, confused. What's down there? He looked at me, then simply said, her shrine. We broke the lock with a crowbar. The hatch groaned open like a monster waking from sleep.